Hey, how's it going, Daniel? How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Graham?
Doing great, man. How was your St. Patrick's Day?
Well, so I didn't realize it was St. Patrick's Day until I later in the day. I don't want to say later, maybe like 10 a.m., which is later when you have young kids and you get
Yep.
up at 5 a.m. But it was only when I realized my daughter is actually the one who told me, and she's she'll be 4 in May, and she's like, "I'm wearing green for St. Patrick's Day." I was like, "Oh no." I was very concerned she was going to pinch me.
Well, kind of going off of that, how's fatherhood been going for you, man? Like you said, you've had Birdie obviously for a couple of years now. You said she's turning 4 in May, and obviously you had the birth of your son Buddy a couple months ago. So how's that been going for you, dude?
Oh man, it's so good. Like anybody knows that parenting, if all anybody talks about is parental bliss, they're lying, right? Because it's like, there's the struggle part of it too. But our boy has turned into this incredible sleeper.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we put him down at like 5 p.m. and he sleeps all the way until 6 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
That's like 13 hours straight, so it becomes really tough when you've got an infant who's waking up every couple hours, and then you've got a toddler who's waking up at 6:37 or whatever it is,
Yeah.
and you're just struggling to make it work, and I'm traveling 3 days a week, and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But now that he started sleeping so much,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what a game changer, and everything feels so easy. like and our daughter, I mean, she's just so great. There's this great Jason Isbell song that came out last year that was like, he talks about being your daddy was easy, right? And parenting is never easy, but it started to feel so easy with the two of them, especially in comparison when you have an infant and you're running around. It's it's nuts, but it's just, we're also very blessed that both of our children have great temperaments. Like, our little boy smiles nonstop. Like, he's just always happy. So yeah, we're really lucky. And there's not many things that I love more than wrestling, right? And then you become a dad, and that changes your whole perspective on everything. So.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, man. I know you said maybe this was a couple weeks ago on Twitter, that you've since read, 16 books so far in 2021? Is that accurate? Somewhere around there, right?
So I've stopped kind of counting. I go for a book a week.
Wow.
But I really was nailing it at the beginning of the year, where I was getting like 3 books every 2 weeks. So now I'm well over my number. I need to go back and count again, but I'm well ahead of the book a week thing. Edge had talked to me a while ago about trying to read, I think, maybe 75 books in a year.
Wow.
And I've never tried for that number. I've always tried for a book a week, but I'm thinking this year maybe trying for 75, and then next year maybe trying for 100.
Oh my God.
Seeing if I can do it. So,
does having the quarantine and stuff like that help with that, giving you more time? Because you're a father of 2 now, so where do you find the time?
oh no, it's purely, I read very little at home.
Okay.
Like, when I'm at home, I'm lucky if I get 20 minutes a day to read.
Yeah.
But I think it's like anything else. It's developing the habit of, when you have the free time, like typically I read at night before we go to bed, instead of watching Netflix, or instead of goofing around on my phone, or instead of doing anything like that, I read. But where the real thing is so I made this rule for myself, where I'm not allowed to watch movies on planes. And so, which is kind of ridiculous, but it's just this rule that I've set for myself in order so that I could read more. And so, living on the West Coast, and all of our shows are in Florida, like, I pretty much read the whole flight. And because maybe 2 years ago I took this speed reading class, and like my reading speed has just gone up exponentially. And it's not, some speed reading is like skimming, but that's not what this is. This is improving your comprehension and your speed.
Yeah.
So like my reading speed has tripled, and depending on the material, if it's really technical scientific stuff, I have to go slower. But for most of the stuff that I read, I'm reading anywhere between 500 and 700 words a minute, which is pretty fast.
Damn,
So
that is impressive. That's pretty cool. And you guys are in Napa, right? Because you guys, I know that was covered on the Total Bellas the last season, right? So that's quite a long journey from there to Florida.
yeah, and not only that, it's not like there's not a really close airport either.
Yeah.
So it's like there's driving time, which I get to listen to. I like to listen to podcasts, but then, once you go from Sacramento or San Francisco and you connect somewhere, I mean, you're traveling for like 10 hours. So that's a lot of good reading time.
Yeah, no, it definitely adds up. Well, we do have a pay-per-view this weekend. You're facing Roman Reigns for the Universal Championship. It's going to be a great match. The funny thing about this match is that we've been in this position before. 6 years ago, Fastlane 2015, you faced Roman Reigns. Had you beaten him, you would have gone on to WrestleMania to be in the WWE title match. Almost the exact same situation 6 years later. How much different is this story from 6 years ago in terms of where you are? Obviously retired, you're back now. How does this compare to that initial war with Roman Reigns from 2015?
Well, it's crazy because it somehow, even though despite the time, it seems somehow like a continuation of what happened in 2015. A little bit, he's much more established now. You know what I mean? Like, he hadn't main evented a WrestleMania yet, and now I think he's main evented 4 WrestleManias.
Yeah.
If he wouldn't have had to pull out last year with COVID, he'd have main evented 5 WrestleManias. So this will be his 5th WrestleMania main event. I haven't main evented a pay-per-view in 2 years, let alone a WrestleMania.
Yeah.
Main evented a WrestleMania since the one time I did it, and at WrestleMania 30, and so it's different. It feels to me more like I'm the underdog in this one.
Yeah.
Than much more the underdog than I was before, and this one also feels like he's got a ton of momentum on the side. In a lot of people's eyes, he's the most interesting character in all of WWE, and as opposed to in the 2015 match at Fastlane, people weren't really sure what to make of him yet. You know what I mean? So they weren't quite sure, and now he's firmly entrenched in his role. He knows exactly who he is as a performer and that sort of thing. He doesn't take anybody's crap, and I'm excited. But this is actually the match I've been looking forward to most since I came back.
Wow.
Like, I thought, like when I come back, there's a couple big matches that I want to really knock out of the park, and at the top of the list is Roman Reigns.
I mean, it just makes sense, too. This is a match, I think, not just yourself, but I think everyone's been looking forward to you having for such a long time now, as well as Roman, because this goes back to that same, that Rumble match, that 2015 right before Fastlane, with people wanting you to win. Roman won instead, and it goes back 6 years, and the fact you guys have been able to kind of play off of that in recent weeks has made for just must-see television. And you mentioned the WrestleMania that you headlined 6-7 years ago at this point, WrestleMania 30, how you kind of work your way into it, made it a triple threat, came out WWE champion. Is it harder to have moments like that when there's no fans in attendance? Because I know we have the Thunderdome, and it's a great atmosphere. For a guy like Cesaro, for example, that's kind of in a similar position right now, where the fans would be behind. Or actually, Kofi Kingston. Kofi would be a perfect example from 2 years ago, when the fans really rallied behind him. You were the perfect foil in that position, given your own story. Is it harder to have moments like that if it does turn into a triple threat at Mania without the fans in attendance?
Well, so, what's interesting is you don't know who has momentum, right? You don't know who has real fan momentum. I mean, watching the show, you can kind of feel who does and who doesn't. Like, it'll be interesting to me. I mean, there's a lot of, I'm very interested at WrestleMania, regardless if he's in the championship match or not, how the people react to Roman Reigns. Because it's very likely, I think there's a good chance that he's going to get cheered, right? Yeah. Like, people have wanted to boo him for years, and now they get a chance, and I wouldn't be surprised if they mostly cheer him, right? So another interesting one who I think has made a lot of strides in the last several weeks, in the last month, is Apollo Crews.
Yeah.
Who's been doing some really good stuff, and then also Cesaro, right? I think Cesaro is kind of on a hot streak, and if we had fans there live, I wouldn't be surprised if Cesaro's chance would break out in the middle of the show, and and that sort of thing. But that's the thing, you don't know. These are just guesses. And I've been wrong with many guesses in the past, as we all have. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I guess we'll find out, because again, that same Mania that you main evented, Cesaro had his moment earlier on in the show as well, so it can be kind of a similar situation, 7 years later, which is cool. But you mentioned Cesaro, you mentioned Apollo Crews, people are doing great work on SmackDown right now. And the cool thing about it, I think, is that you've always mentioned that SmackDown is like the show that you really want to take under your wing. Like, we're going back 6-7 years now, like when you wanted to be Intercontinental Champion, really, be the helm of the show. And now we're seeing that now, which is super cool, and you're one of the only people since you've been back that hasn't switched shows. You've firmly been on SmackDown, which is cool. Aside from the obvious, you mentioned Cesaro, Apollo Crews. We've heard rumors of Big E and how big of a fan you are of him, which is, again, no secret given how great he is as well. Is there anyone else in either SmackDown, Raw, or even NXT that you see as someone, whether they're not at the level that you think they should be, or someone that you think could be a bigger star down the road, that's like a Daniel Bryan guy, so to speak?
Well, so it's really hard to say. I mean, there's people that I specifically think are fantastic and want to wrestle, and it's hard to like not mention the other people, right? So there's this dream match that I've always had that everybody just looks at me and like, what? But that's only if they haven't seen him wrestle in Mexico, and that's Grand Metalik, right? Like that guy's awesome, But in the Rumble, I was so stoked to be able to get into it with Matt Riddle and get into it a little bit with Ricochet. And I was a little bummed Keith Lee wasn't in the match, because I would love to get into it with Keith Lee and that sort of thing. And so but you don't know who's going to really break through. I thought for a second last year, Angel Garza was going to break through. Yeah, like it felt like he had a lot of momentum and all that kind of stuff. And then and sometimes things just don't work out. But I think it'll be interesting to see once we start getting more live crowds and all that kind of stuff, who's really breaking through with the fans.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think in the last couple of years, it's cool because you kind of go back over the list of people that you've always wanted to have matches with, and we've seen that in the last couple of years. Even when you were still active the first time around, like a Daniel Bryan AJ Styles match is a match that fans probably never thought they would see, and we ended up getting that multiple times. You've gone on the record in saying you wanted to face Shinsuke Nakamura. Again, we've seen that match a couple of times back when you were IC champion, he was IC champion. Is there a match like that right now that you say to yourself, like an interpromotional match, for example, that you say to yourself, okay, this would be awesome. If all these companies were working together in an ideal world, this is a match I would want to have?
There's a handful. I mean, tons.
Yeah.
But Okada, from the time I got to WWE until now, like he's gone from somebody that you didn't really know much about to one of the best wrestlers in the world, right? Like, so, obviously somebody like that. I've actually wrestled Shingo, and Shingo's fantastic.
Yeah.
But when you look at people from AEW, there's people that, like, I always loved, even in Ring of Honor, and I wasn't even 30 years old yet, but for whatever reason, I was just like this veteran guy. So I wrestled Seth Rollins in one of his first big singles matches in Ring of Honor, and it was really the story of the veteran versus the young up-and-comer and that sort of thing. And I've always loved doing those kind of matches. So when you look at, like, the AEWs or whatever it is, somebody like Jungle Boy or MJF or Darby Allin, right? Those guys are really interesting to me. When you look at NXT, he's not young, but I've always wanted to wrestle Kushida, right? Like, that guy's great. But I also, like, Kyle O'Reilly and I don't know if we've ever wrestled, but, like, I've always wanted to do a singles match with him and he's gotten so good.
Yeah.
And Finn Balor and I have wrestled in, like, on the independents, maybe once or twice. I don't remember, but I'd love to do a match with him in WWE. I mean, there's just so many guys. The problem is, guys are so good now, and I like wrestling so much. So once you start naming names, then other names come up, right? And
yeah,
it's just like this whole list of in Ring of Honor, there's a guy named Jonathan Gresham.
Yeah, oh, he's fantastic.
Yeah, he's fantastic. I'd love to wrestle Jonathan Gresham. You know what I mean? Like, there's all these great guys, but So when people say that, one of the things that I don't like about that is sometimes it minimizes like how many guys in WWE that I'd love to wrestle, right? And that's why I bring up, like, I've never wrestled Matt Riddle one-on-one. I've never wrestled Ricochet one-on-one. I've wrestled Johnny Gargano one-on-one before I came to WWE, but it was mostly like a comedy match where I got my pants pulled down and my butt was out for probably a full 5 minutes. But like, you know, like a Kushida match, a Kyle O'Reilly match. I mean, there's so many great guys. You know, William Regal's son, Bailey Matthews, just debuted on NXT UK.
Yeah.
I would love to do a match with him, right? Like, William Regal has helped me so much in my career. So, like, when I don't know, when you start talking about guys I want to wrestle, like, I get really fired up, and there's all these names. And so it's just, you know, it's hard to limit it to just a few.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, just saying that, knowing how passionate you are about wrestling, just seeing, because, like, literally every year that goes by, the roster, not just in WWE, but everywhere, of wrestlers, it just gets better and better in terms of pure amazing wrestlers out there. Does that make you reconsider your idea to, because, you know, you've been saying lately, this might be my last WrestleMania, which it could be. Does this make you reconsider your decision to retire, knowing how many more people you can be working with?
Well, so it's not necessarily a decision to retire. It's a decision to stop being a full-time wrestler.
Okay.
And I don't think that is going to change much. You know, although you know, maybe, but I mean, even now, like, so this is a pay-per-view weekend, so I'll leave tomorrow. So I'm gone Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, come home Monday, get home about 2:30 p.m., right? So that's a full 5 days not being at home with my kids, and I really, really miss them. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, to do that, and you know, that's a pay-per-view weekend. Most weekends I'm gone for 3 days. So, like, I'll leave on a Thursday, I come home on a Saturday, but it's still like a full 2.5 days where my wife is doing it a lot on her own, that sort of thing. And also, like, when I come back, I always want to be 100% present for my kids. And that becomes really hard when you're exhausted and doing cross-country flights and all that kind of stuff every single week. And so, like, I do it. And the really funny thing is, so I hate coffee. I never drank coffee.
I don't drink coffee either.
Until we had our daughter.
Oh, okay.
And then it's become like a necessity. And even though I hate coffee, I can only drink cold brew because, like, cold coffee goes down faster, right? Yeah. But, like, I have to just coffee up on my drive home because when I come home and the kids haven't seen me in 2.5 days, I want them to see how excited I am to see them, right? And so, like, I want to come home with that energy for them. And I want to be, as soon as I come home, and, you know, our daughter is at that age where she has so much energy and she wants to play and she wants to go to the playground and all that kind of stuff. So I come home and kiss my wife, kiss our son, play with him a little bit, give my daughter a big hug, and then, okay, sweet girl, let's go play, right? Yeah. And I want to do that. And that, as you get older, that energy gets harder and harder to come by.
Yeah, you talked about that in Talking Smack, yeah.
So it's that's just one of the things is, you know, there's not many things that could make me stop wrestling. Yeah. But the one that made me really reconsider it was when my daughter said this: "Dada, please don't go."
Oh man, that's so heart-wrenching.
And then all of a sudden, it's just like, oh God, you know what I mean? And the hard thing for me is I do a lot of meditation and I try to stay very present with stuff. But these moments when they're young goes by so fast. And, you know, the saying of the days are long, but the years are short is so true. Like, there are some days that feel like they take forever when you've got a crying baby and all this kind of stuff. And you're just like, you know, but my daughter's turning 4 in May and it seems like it's gone by so fast. Yeah. And, like, soon, like, she's at this point now where she's like, Mama, Dada, can I sleep between you? And, you know, and we can't do it. We don't do it much. Right. But there's going to be a time when she doesn't want that. Yeah, exactly. Right? Got to take advantage of it. Yeah. Yeah. And so it's like, I want to experience all those things and be able to do all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. The issue is, I don't want to say the issue. The main thing is what is full time and what is not full time, because the lines are being blurred between that all the time. You know what I mean? And so it's like, how much do you want to leave the house? How much do you want to stay at home? Like, because there's also a part of me that, like, because I'm so passionate about it and I get so excited about it, like, there's a part of me that thinks it's good for me to do it a decent amount, because, like, you want to show your kids that you're excited about something, right? That you have, like, I want my daughter and I want my son to see that their dad loves doing his work, that his work isn't like this, like, gotta slog to work today. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want them to have that relationship to work. And so, that they can do something that they love and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, it's a weird thing to think about it, and we don't have the answers. My wife and I are talking about it. It's, you know, it's like, we don't have the answers, and it might just be trial and error. You know, to see how much is, like, a good balance between being home and then being able to go do this thing that I love so much.
Yeah, 100%, dude. Last question for you before I let you go, because I've always been fascinated. It's great that you talk about that, because so much has changed since you initially retired 5 years ago. From, you know, the last Roman match that we had with you guys 5-6 years ago, from when you retired the first time. You went on to become a commentator. You were SmackDown GM for a while. I think that period, people talk about your best matches and whatnot, but I think that period when you were retired and on Talking Smack every week, you were doing the CWC commentary, you were the SmackDown GM, was just a fascinating period. Because it really felt like there was no limits there to what you could do. Like, you had no filter on Talking Smack, and made for some amazing moments with you and Renee talking about Tout and stuff like that. You know, you talked many, many times about how close you were to leaving and going elsewhere if they weren't going to let you, you know, wrestle, and obviously now that's the case. How close were you to making that decision to going elsewhere? Could we have seen you in an AEW had things not gone the way that they did 3 years ago?
Well, you know, for sure. Like, if they were not going to let me wrestle, I was for sure gone, right? Because I had gotten cleared by so many doctors, you know, at that point, and felt very, very confident in my ability to be able to wrestle. So I'm very thankful that you know, the frustrating part. I don't want to say the frustrating part. The part that I'm disappointed in myself about is that I had a bad attitude about it. Right. Like, I don't want to say I showed up to work with a bad attitude and I'm like, screw this place or whatever.
I understand.
You know what I mean? But like, as opposed to embracing it and really trying to do my best work, a lot of times I didn't. And it was just like, I showed up to work, even if I showed up with a smile on my face, I showed up with in the back of my head thinking, man, I just want to get home. Like, I don't want to be here. Like, it was really hard for me to watch other people do what I love up close and not be able to do it. Right. Yeah. Like, the worst one was I had to sit ringside for a Dean Ambrose AJ Styles match. And that was the one that broke me. Yeah. And that was the one that was just like, you know what? Because AJ and I never, at that point, he hadn't come to WWE before I retired, you know? And so, and seeing those two guys go out there, and they're both great, and just being like, man, I should be in there doing this with these guys, you know? And it really ate me up. And like, when I came home, it was just like, I think Bree from there saw like a kind of a different person as far as like striving to prove, because that was the thing. I had to prove that I was healthy, as opposed to proving that, as opposed to them having to prove that I shouldn't be able to wrestle. It's me having to prove, and given the circumstances, that's the absolute right tact that they should have taken, right? Like, hey, this guy's lied to us about his history of concussions, right? Yeah. Like, exactly. I can't, I hate, I have really tried not to, like, to make even in my own internal dialogue, to not make myself the victim in that scenario, right? Because the reality is, you're a $1 billion company, like, hey, this guy's lied to you about a very serious thing. Like, how can you trust him, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, and the nice thing is that for the most part, besides that lie, I've been mostly pretty honest with him on everything else.
Yeah. That's good.
So I think I've earned a lot of trust, and then, you know, they go through pretty strict protocols with me, you know, after every match to make sure that I'm healthy and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, but yeah, I was. So that's the thing I was really disappointed in about myself, is just that I didn't have a better attitude about it, and I think about that more now as a parent.
Yeah.
As far as like, if my daughter was in the same situation, how would I guide her? Right? What would I want her to do? Or vice versa? What would me from 10 years later tell myself? Like, hey, you need to not have such a bad attitude. Go to work. Some of these people you're not going to see ever again. You know what I mean? Like, from the time I got cleared, you know, there were a lot of people that, you know, I never got to see again. You know, and they saw bad attitude Bryan instead of good attitude Bryan. You know, and you don't want that. So yeah. So those are just some of the things.
Yeah, no, it's awesome, dude, and I really appreciate that. It's been cool to see you back in the ring the last couple of years. Like I said, even during that period, your stuff on Talking Smack was fantastic, and we're seeing that again now with you and Heyman and people like that. It's amazing. But Fastlane coming up on Sunday, you and Roman Reigns, Universal Championship. It's going to be fantastic. Bryan, thanks so much for the time, man. I really appreciate this.
Yep, thank you very much, Graham.